talking about environment, what we're really talking about is the kind of overall context of the program, and to just think through in broad terms what is going on in the backdrop of your program at these different levels. And I know some people feel more comfortable calling it the program environment. Other people call it maybe the program context. So we're just trying to get you to think in this sort of way. And when some of the things that we consider and that might impact how our activities are able to operate, there's maybe several different levels. And as a caveat, I just want to mention that when we've talked about this in trainings before, people ask, well, do I need to go and do a whole other survey or kind of do a whole lot of work on this environment or this contextual piece first? And we understand that you might not have resources to cover every single point that I'm about to give, but it's just to kind of get your mind thinking on all of the different situations that you could find yourself in. And you might have some of this data that I'm about to mention. You might have trends data, or you might know a little bit about the country, environment, or context. But this list that I'm about to give is to just help you consider these things. You don't have to have a concrete answer for everything that I'm about to say. But when you think about the context, you might be thinking at a broader level. What policies, regulations, rules are you up against? And this could vary a lot by country or by region. And that's going to be very particular to your program and how you're operating your program within the confines of wherever you are. And so you might want to think about that, of the rules that your program has, or that might stop a certain activity from reaching full success, and just kind of keeping those in mind. This kind of broader context, you might want to consider other influences at the larger level, media influences. And as Vish mentioned before, in the context of COVID-19, any COVID-19 program that you try to roll out, it's going to have to compete with misinformation and disinformation and so much other information. How are you going to make your message or activity shine through? And that's a really valid concern as you think through activities related to COVID. And there might be other media trends or other competing messages in the environment somehow that you have to at least account for or be aware of. When you reach the community level, and this might be particularly helpful for thinking through what your activities are going to do within a certain community, but what are basic community beliefs? How is it structured? And thinking back to our stakeholders, what are those key community leaders that people trust? Maybe it's the religious leaders in the community or healthcare workers that are based from that community. Who are those important people? And should you consider them to be on your stakeholder list as you think through this? And how are they going to influence your activities? Are there partnerships that maybe we could consider as we think through these community steps that would help you if you don't think your activity might be as successful? Like, what are those kind of key partnerships? What are the community related beliefs that could either help or kind of be a challenge to your program? And how is your activity going to operate within that community setting? And this is where your resource list that you created in the previous step comes in handy. What is that workplace culture like? Who's out gathering the data? What are the usual rules? Does your organization usually have so much data that people are overwhelmed and one more thing might really be taxing to them? And if that's the case, how would you work with them to make this a more integrated process of what you're about to collect? Is there that culture of learning? How big could you go? Like, maybe you'll walk through your activities and see, oh, well, I have a huge question. Maybe this activity won't work at all and we need to change everything. But if you've got that kind of workplace culture where that's not going to work, you need to kind of be able to think about all of those things as you're structuring what you're actually focusing on for responsive feedback in the end. And then finally, it can't be understated that the needs of the beneficiaries also apply a lot to this type of context. Are they interested in COVID-19? Do they have those beliefs and barriers in place? If COVID-19 is your project, what are they interested in? Are there other competing concerns that might impact their ability to do your program? Transportation, time, other family members to take care of. If you plan this activity, but people are already so overbooked and overstressed with basic needs or other responsibilities, that activity might not be successful. So as I said, that's a pretty comprehensive list, and we're not expecting you to go through and answer every single part of all of these questions, but having those in your mind as you start to break down these activities in this step can help that process of you thinking through, well, what could go wrong? Oh, I didn't even think that transportation to the activity would be a really important step, but maybe it is. Do we know anything about that? So it's giving you that background context that can really help frame, as you take this critical look at your activities, what should I be thinking about as I move forward?